dudes and dudettes? How are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to The Mixer, the segment on this channel where I do things. Where I do videos about different walks of life, animals and nature and history, traveling, celebrities and athletes and music and whatnot, Music is a very rare one to do, but today I'm going to be going back to that, I'm sorry for butchering this intro. It's just, this is the first mixer in a long time, the first one back from my break, so it's natural that I would have gotten a little bit more uncomfortable with doing the introduction and And so, today I'm going to be starting a whole new subcategory within the mixer category here on my YouTube channel, where I'm going to be talking about musicians and bands, musical acts that have for some reason disappeared through history, I'm going to be calling it the Whatever Happened To ... series, And today I'm going to start off by talking about Dead by Sunrise, which ironically is one of my most favorite bands ever, even though they made a very small impact on the music scene, because they released just one studio album and they were active for a very brief period, and it's really sad because I still listen to their music on Spotify today, their album, and it's just so amazing what could have been, In case you guys don't know the history, I'm pretty sure you know the band Linkin Park. You may have heard of them. They were one of the greatest bands in the world for a few years, Unfortunately, they disbanded in 2017 because lead vocalist Chester Bennington unfortunately took his own life, And what many people might not know is that he was actually not only the founder but the vocalist for Dead by Sunrise as well, Because Linkin Park exploded onto the music scene in the late 90s where they were working on their first studio album, Because they were working on some demo tracks and compilations, EPs and all that, but they were starting to gain traction in the late 90s and then officially went, they just skyrocketed into fame in 2000 with the release of their first album, Hybrid Theory, 3 years later they would follow that up with the equally amazing Meteora, and then a whopping 4 years later in 2007 they would release their third album, which was Minutes to Midnight. However, between that period there, Chester was expanding into new horizons because he started to write songs that he felt didn't really fit really well with Linkin Park, stylistically and lyrically, they just weren't the right fit, because instead of taking those songs and turning them into Linkin Park to remix them and turn them into songs that he could perform with Mike Shinoda, he decided to take them in their whole and use them somewhere else. And even though the groundwork, the foundation for Dead by Sunrise was laid many years before that in the early 2000s, in 2005 was when they officially formed, with members of bands like Julien-K and Orgy. Yes, there was once a rock band called Orgy. Don't look that up. Don't go into too much detail. Trust me, you don't want to know. But anyway, he created this band, and the songs, the entire atmosphere is a little bit darker and moodier than Linkin Park, and it was actually a very good decision by Chester, because if he had allowed these songs to be filtered through Linkin Park style, they would not have been the same. And Dead by Sunrise, actually, they incorporated a lot of different styles throughout their time that they were active, a little bit of alternative rock and alternative metal as well, with elements of hard rock and even a little bit of electronic rock and even post-grunge, which is very strange because at that time, I thought that post-grunge was kind of all but dead, pretty much extinct. And the thing with this band is that because they were active for such a short time and they released only one studio album and just a few singles from it, it's going to be very hard to find clips of them that I might be able to use here in this video, because this is why I rarely do these musical videos, because I like to put in clips and it's really hard to get ones that are not copyright claimed, But I'm going to try to give you guys something here, a live performance by Dead by Sunrise back when they were still active. hopefully that looked awesome, you know. I'm sorry ahead of time if all I got was a very crappy, not good quality clip, you know, because I have to work with what I can, guys, you know. Even though YouTube has become much more flexible in recent years with the whole copyright stuff, like even if you use something that you're not allowed to, well, like you're allowed to, but even if you use something that's copyright claimed, usually they'll just not let me monetize. So, but I just want to play by the rules, you know. So anyway, now like I said before, Dead by Sunrise released just one album, but before I talk about that, the name of the album and the concept behind it, you know, the name Dead by Sunrise, originally when the band was formed, they were called Snow White Tan. I have no idea why the hell that was the case. I could not find any piece of research online for suggesting why they were called that, but they eventually changed their name to Dead by Sunrise because at the time, you know, at the beginning of Linkin Park's success and Chester being a famous rock star, he was really partying like a rock star, you know, like a true rock star, they say. You know, he was going to parties and doing drugs and like staying up late all night, you know, doing stuff, you know, this crazy erratic frenetic lifestyle, you know, pretty much every single week. And sometimes he would drive himself into a very self-destructive path, you know, and he had no idea if he was even going to live to see the next day, you know. He didn't know if he was going to see the sunrise. So that's why the name of the band is Dead by Sunrise, because Chester, along with a few other members, probably expected at one point to be dead by sunrise, you know, and that's where it comes from. And so they released their very first and only studio album called Out of Ashes in 2009. And the reason it's called that is exactly because of that lifestyle that Chester was leading at the time, you know. When he came out of that, you know, when he got sober, stopped drinking and doing other kinds of drugs and illegal substances, you know, when he came out of that, it felt like he was rising from the ashes, you know, and creating something new, which was this album, which was his work with this band that really honestly had a lot going for it, you know, because this first album had like the very first few tracks, you know, there are a few breakdowns where you can kind of feel the rock of it, you know, there are a few acoustic songs that are a little slower, but in general, you can really tell that this is a hard rock album, you know. There is a lot of alternative in the middle, but it feels way more like rock than alternative metal. And even Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park himself described that the album was much broodier towards rock, you know. The songs are a lot darker than anything Linkin Park had ever done in their discography up until that point, and even have done till today, you know. Even the darkest Linkin Park songs written by Chester or Mike don't come close to what Dead by Sunrise did, you know, because they deal with everything. They talk about falling in love and falling out of love, going through depression, hearing voices in your head, you know, how world leaders, you know, in politics don't care about the people, the wars that they're ravaging, you know. It pretty much talks about the whole 9 yards. And if you're a teenager going through angst in your life, you can really identify with this album, you can relate to it. But even as a fully grown man like myself, you know, I have demons inside of me. I've gone through a lot in the past, and having been a musician myself once who wrote songs of my own, this album still resonates with me very deeply today, you know. There are some songs that are just crazy, man, you know. There is one, for example, I think it was a single called Crawl Back In, which is one of my favorite ones, you know. And there's a time when he says that sometimes I lie, sometimes I crawl, sometimes I feel like I want to die, you know. That's what Chester says, you know. He puts all of these emotions out in these songs, and it just gets crazy, you know. Now there are just a few tracks, there are 12 in total, and there was a 13th, you know, called Morning After, which was the iTunes and Japanese bonus track when you bought it from iTunes back in the day, you know, which I think is really nice. And there are also songs like Fired Inside of Me and Let Down, which to me really illustrate what Chester was going through at the time that we never knew. Like, I don't want to be let down. I don't want to be let down. I don't want to be let down the same old road, you know. Talking about trusting somebody but feeling betrayed, you know, because they stabbed him in the back. And there are some romantic songs like Give Me Your Name, where he's talking about looking at the smile of one that he loves, you know. I'm guessing at the time his wife, Talinda. And then there are other ones like My Suffering and Condemned, you know, which Condemned talks a little bit more about, you know, the feeling of being trapped inside yourself, you know, and not being able to break free. So each song, like the whole entire album is a narrative. Like the songs are each one tells a standalone story, but at the same time, the entire album is one big story connected. It's Chester talking about what he goes through, you know, and what he went through all his life until he ultimately committed suicide in 2017. So these songs are amazing, man, you know. know. One of the saddest ones, I think, is Walking in Circles, you know, where he talks about living alone in a world with millions of souls walking in circles, you know, trapped in their dreams, unhealthy, unclean, you know. It's really sad, man. If you've never heard this album, I definitely recommend you going to Spotify or going to YouTube even, you know. Just give it a chance. I'm a huge fan of Chester Bennington. Whatever he put out before he died, I listened to and I loved so much. But this really was something special, man. This was a side of him that we never got to see in Linkin Park, which I'm going to try to show you guys here with another performance maybe, or maybe an interview, whatever the hell I can get here to transition to the next part of the video. Okay, hopefully you guys are enjoying those clips there, and hopefully I'm getting the right clips to show you, you know, with going through YouTube's legal judicial system and everything is working out here, you know, it's all good. But anyway, so Chester was very closely involved with the making of this album. You know, he would actually write all of the songs on his acoustic guitar, and then he would work with the band to reshape them into rock or ballads, or even remove the rock influence completely and just make synth-driven tracks, you know. A lot of the tracks do use different effects, which is where the electronic comes in, you know. So it's kind of like a jack of all trades, you know. It's a traditional classic rock sounding album with very clear and tangible elements from other musical endeavors, you know. Now, Chester actually started working on this while on tour in 2008 for Minutes to Midnight, you know, the Linkin Park album. I guess these motorcycle bastards are never gonna leave me alone, huh? Like I said on the previous video, you know, I mean, it's all silent now. I don't have any more neighbors disrupting me, but these motorcycle freaking... Anyway, so a few years later, he would go on with Linkin Park to release 1,000 Suns in 2010, and from that point on, it was very difficult to decide where the new songs he was writing would go, if he could filter them into Dead by Sunrise, or if he was going to use them in Linkin Park to some degree, you know. So even though he was always optimistic about Dead by Sunrise going forward as a side project, you know, similar to Mike Shinoda's Fort Minor, you know, which was kind of formed at around the same time that Dead by Sunrise was. And the thing is that it started to get very difficult, you know, and Bennington's wife Talinda said that they were going to try to perform in 2011 at this season gala event, you know, which focused more on raising donations. And of course, many years later, after many years of inactivity, because Dead by Sunrise was primarily active from 2005 to 2012, which is when they sort of temporarily disbanded. However, in 2017, following Bennington's suicide, they did come together for this one-time reunion, you know, to play a show for him in tribute to Chester, you know, in Las Vegas. And as far as I know, that has been the extent of their career, you know. Like they did perform in 2018, you know, they performed in the One More Light 2 Memorial, you know, but it's like, even though they were honoring Chester in Italy, it's not like they were, you know, like really coming back as a band, you know, because they performed with they actually performed as the band Julien-K with the members of Dead by Sunrise, you know. So it was just very weird. And me personally, I honestly would have loved to have seen this band release maybe just 1 or 2 more albums in their time, you know, because it was such a good idea, man. It was such an amazing concept, you know, a great project by Chester, you know, taking songs that could not fit in Linkin Park and just channel them somewhere else, so the songs would not, because I mean, he had a few choices, right? Either take the songs and chop them up to make them fit into Linkin Park's narrative style, you know, or just discard them completely so we would never hear them. And I'm glad that he didn't do either one of those, you know, because I love Linkin Park. I love not just their main albums, but all of their remixes, the extended plays and stuff, you know, the Linkin Park Underground albums, you know, which are filled to the brim with unreleased tracks. You know, it's awesome, but it's really interesting to see Chester branch out a little bit, just like Mike Shinoda did with Fort Minor, you know. It's him going more to his rap and hip-hop roots, you know, like releasing himself more in a way that he would not be able to with Linkin Park, because again, Linkin Park is not as heavy as we think it is, you know, because if you listen to Fort Minor, then compare that to what Mike rapped about in the Linkin Park albums, it's so much heavier, man. He talks about really serious stuff in Fort Minor, you know. But I don't want to get off topic. Maybe I'll talk about Fort Minor in a different video, but as far as I know, they are still sort of active today, but I don't know, maybe that'll be the follow-up to this one. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about Dead by Sunrise, you know, which is honestly a very underrated album in my opinion, you know, because for starters, it actually on the Billboard 200 it peaked at number 29, you know, back when it was released, and it did have moderate success in the United States, you know, have a lot of favorable reviews, like we're talking 3 out of 4 stars, 2 out of 4 stars, you know, like 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10 all around, you know. So I honestly think it was really successful in my opinion. I really thought that there could have been a follow-up, which we unfortunately will never have now. Before I finish up, let's take a look at just one more clip here of Dead by Sunrise, either performing live or the members giving an interview. I don't know, whatever I can find here about the band.
You kiss away all of my pain, you wash away these bloody stains. You are to blame, my suffering, my suffer. You kiss away all of my pain, you wash away these bitter stains. You are to blame, my suffering.
You know, it's kind of funny because speaking of Billboard, Chester Bennington actually gave an interview for the same, you know, source there, you know, Billboard, in 2009, saying that it wasn't going to be a one-time thing for them, you know, because he could imagine that every 5 years or so there would be a new Dead by Sunrise album, you know, which was unfortunately an epic fail there, you know, because he really did like it. He really did want to keep going, but it's hard when you're a musician, man, you know, whether you're in a band or solo, you know, because the touring life, you know, and having to, because he was simultaneously making songs for Dead by Sunrise's album and also Linkin Park's then unreleased 4th album, you know, so it gets really hard to balance that kind of thing, you know, and having to tour with both bands, you know. I think that there was one time where he was on tour with Linkin Park, either in 09 or 2010, where he actually came on stage, I think, with the members of Dead by Sunrise and performed one of their songs, you know. That was really cool, you know. It's like save time, do a tour with both bands, you know. But I still think that, you know, it would have been way too hard if he had stuck with it, you know. It's sad, of course, tragic, you know. I would have loved to see more work by Dead by Sunrise, but that's how it is. They will go down in music history now, you know, and we unfortunately will never get a new album, you know. It's easier, it's like I said of Linkin Park before, it's easier to just disband them completely, you know, because we will never find another Chester Bennington. It's impossible. But anyway, guys, after sharing that with you, a little bit of the history, you know, and showing you 3 different clips, I think I can end it here, you know, because there's really not much else to say. Whenever I do these Whatever Happened To videos, you know, it's going to be really short, maybe under 20 minutes, because I mean, it's gone, you know, the band doesn't exist anymore. There's really not much I can say, except that I really miss them. I really wish they would have given us more work before they disbanded and before Chester unfortunately decided to leave us for good. But that's it, guys. If you had never heard of Dead by Sunrise before, hopefully this video was informative for you, and go on Spotify or YouTube or iTunes, Deezer, wherever the hell you consume music, as long as it's not pirated, you know. Go and listen to their first album. Let me know in the comments below what you think, you know, if you've heard it before, and if I was the one who influenced you to, you know, listen to their songs and come back and tell me what you thought, you know. I personally think it's a really good album, you know, very good band that unfortunately just doesn't exist anymore, and that's life. If you guys happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a like, and also subscribe to my channel because I release videos every single day. And while you're at it, hit the notification bell too so you can know exactly what time I upload, because it's going to be videos every single day, hopefully, you know, 1 per day, 2 on Sundays, and let's just hope that nothing else happens that will keep me away from that objective there. Hopefully by the next time I'll be getting a haircut. What is that? Hopefully by the next time I'm here, I gotten a haircut, it's gonna look better, you know, so it's all good. Freaking bastard playing loud music in his car. Anyway, guys, this is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Roll the outro screen. Freaking hate these bastards, man.